Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby, where, with the help of fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. Join me to look back at the Lions' first match down under as someone earning the cap before his 70th. Now, I wrote it that way, so I wouldn't be tempted to resort to schoolboy humor if I said the actual number. Welcome back to Mr. Conor Cronin.
Good to be back. Didn't realize that one was the one that had crept up on us. So yeah, there we go.
Absolutely.
You know, the square root of that number is 8 something.
We go into decimal points there, I think, if my maths serve me right. Yeah, that's it, exactly. Okay, well, listen, now you might have thought the season was over when Leinster won the URC. I'm going to keep saying that whenever chance I get, so just everyone get used to that.
Day 14 of that.
Something like that, yeah. It'd be 365, so that's a lot of days to go. No, but anyway, we thought the season was over, or at least when it came to Irish interest anyway, but there was still loads of it this weekend. I mean, at the Stade de France, Joey Carberry was on the pitch for extra time as Bordeaux couldn't stop Toulouse from winning another Top 14 title. Down in Cape Town, we had Cian Healy and Peter O'Mahony sporting the famous Barbarians jersey, although they lost 54-7. But that exact same scoreline had been recorded in Perth earlier that morning in favor of the Lions in a comfortable victory over the Western Force as 3 Leinster players found their way into the score sheet. What did you make of it, Conor?
Yeah, I think I'm like a lot of people where I'm not entirely enamored by the whole prospect of the Lions and everything it presents. But then you can't help but be a little bit interested when you've got 8 Irish players in the starting lineup and you've got an extra 3 then on the bench as well. So you kind of get sucked into it a little bit. I think from perspective of how the Lions played this weekend, it's these warm-up matches are really important because, as Kino put it in the chat, and I know you mentioned it last week in the on the pod, you get players putting their hands up for a variety of different reasons, and some players are putting their hand up to say, I am definitely a midweek player, and some players are putting their hand up to say, I'm out for the test jersey, please and thank you. Look, I think with or without released players and all the faff that there was during the week about whether players would be released or not, I don't think Western Force were going to ever put up something equivalent to the test setup, and certainly not something equivalent to what Argentina put up against the Lions last week. I think that some of their players, it was a good opportunity for them to test themselves against the Lions and then go and join Joe Schmidt in the Australia camp for the next couple of weeks and come back being able to say, here's what I experienced and here's what went well for me and here's what didn't go well for me. From a Lions perspective, players who put their hands up and said and did good things for themselves, I think there can't be any question that Dan Sheehan will be one of the first names on the sheet. I think that he is rock solid in that spot. And anyone thinking that insert other hooker's name here will get a look in if Dan is fit and healthy, they're deluding themselves. He is absolutely world class. And I'd go as far as to say, he's probably the best number 2 in the world right now. I'm open to debate on that, but I really think he's that good. And you see it when in very early doors, he's over for the first try. And if you look at how that try happens, Finn Russell looking up and seeing Dan on the wing with a heap of space, and Dan beautifully bats it down. It's that thing of, I'm drawing players here. I'm at risk of not taking the ball cleanly. So as he bats it down to James Lowe and then finds himself creating room for himself back inside, Lowe's offload for that it's filth. It really is. And It's beautiful to watch though, and it's yeah. I really think Dan has put his name up. I think Finn Russell's put his name up as well. I know I've just mentioned him. I think he played really, really well. He was very heads up, very aware of what was going on and what opportunities there were. Will he get those opportunities against primed and ready Australia squad? Not as many of them, but I think he's the kind of player who he's just in a very good vein of form right now. The fact that he had such a good run with Bath this season really helps. So I think he's definitely put his name in as a player to get the opportunity. I think James Lowe has done the same. I think he had a very good game. I know there was a bit of back and forth with Jay and Ed last week about Mac Hansen. I think Mac's done himself some good favours this week as well. I think a couple of players who've possibly dropped in expectation, maybe we'll say. Tide Byrne was definitely not at his best. I think he's trying too hard almost, and in trying too hard, I think he's given away some silly, sloppy penalties in both of the games he's featured in. I think Tyke Furlong is also suffering a bit. It's a lack of time on the pitch more than anything else, in my opinion. It's a lack of having had opportunity to run around and work his way up to his best, coming back off an injury. So he definitely wasn't at his best. And unless he plays at a much higher level in the next couple of games, he has no opportunity, I don't think, to get his way into, never mind the starting 15, I think the 23. He needs to do a lot to get there. Other players I think did well. I think Elliot Daly had a decent game. I think Joe McCarthy had a brilliant game. I think Joe was absolutely outstanding and well rewarded for his man of the match gong that he got. Player of the match that he got. I think Josh van der Fleer's tackle numbers were immense. At one point, 19 tackles. Just absolutely huge, and none missed. And that's very important as well. The fact that he's, it's not just he's putting in the tackles, it's that none of them were missed. I think the centre pairing, I'd love to see another outing of it. I think they played very well together. I'd love to see another go at that and see what that presents. There's a lot of people been critical because Gary's shooting up. They don't realise the impact that shooting has. It's like, oh, he shoots up and they miss. Yeah, but then where do they go? Straight into the arms of somebody who's waiting. So it's all about slowing things down. It's all about making it hard for them to create play.
And when he does hit you, you know about it. And you'll have seen the videos of him doing it to other people. So just the sight of him
even
alone.
Just that game. Just that game. And I can't remember who it was, but like, poor man was down for about 3 minutes from a Gary hit. So those hits matter. I think, I hope Tomas Williams is not a long-term injury, because I think he played really well at the weekend and would be worthy of the 21 jersey, assuming that Jamison Gibson Park is playing in the 9 jersey. Well, we're hoping he'll be playing in the 9 jersey this coming week, just to get a chance to see him and see where he's at. Like I say, some players who've really put their hands up, and it's great to see that so many of those. I mean, it's easy when you've got 8 Irish players on the pitch to highlight some, but I think no harm that they've done themselves well. And a quick mention for Henry Pollock, who I think had a decent game. I don't think 8 is his position. I think he's done well and taken good opportunities. The space gets created for him and he really runs into it very well. He had some good lines and good support running to eventually set up one of the Williams tries. But look, a good outing, lessons learned, bonds becoming more cohesive, and players are becoming more cohesive with each other. not a whole lot else you can say about a game like that.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot to talk about. I mean, I think I think starting with Dan is good because we actually spoke about this on the pod just a few weeks ago. I mean, you had the Leinster quarterfinal against the Scarlets, and then Dan came back into the start. He was on the bench for that game. He started against Glasgow, and literally immediately from the kickoff scored a try. It's that instant impact. You're happy to see him in the squad, but you don't expect it to be that immediate. So now you see him. You had the Lions disappointing last weekend. They lost to Argentina. Plenty of circumstances. We dealt with that last week. He comes into the squad. Now he's captain. And literally at the start, there he is. Now, obviously, there was a lot of other components. You said it yourself. Finn Russell had a great game. He was very impressed. Obviously, the Bath, the winning the Premiership, and all that kind of suited him well. He was in a good frame of mind coming into the squad. James Lowe, he was also in a good frame of mind. Apparently, he's being wound up by the stadium announcer before the game, who mentioned he was a Kiwi when he read out his name, and so he was kind of a bit spurred on by that. Again, instant impact. First touch of the ball that showed them. But that kind of start. Now, of course, the Force went straight down the other end and scored themselves. So we thought, oh, maybe you never know what's going to happen here. But I think, like you said, two teams in a completely different track. One that's getting set for a big 3-game test series. And another that's just, a lot of them, they were going off to the Wallies, but a lot of them as well are finishing for the summer. So it was kind of a contrast there. I think Sam Carter was finishing his career altogether. I think this was his last game. So as the game progressed, you could tell which team was kind of taking it more seriously, but was definitely working on better cohesion and stuff. Joe McCarthy, yes, definitely superb. It's like he's come out of himself. I don't know. You don't notice him as much recently for Leinster. I think for Leinster in particular, there's so much emphasis on the defense that you don't see them sort of breaking out as much. It's like, I'm sure they're focusing on defense here as well, but it's a different system. I think he's kind of freer and stuff. He's able to go after more and go on more runs and go for his offloads and stuff like that. He was just a much bigger presence in this team, and he's really made a name for himself.
More of a Snyman presence.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of.
It's like in the Leinster system, he has his role, but in this system, he seems to have more of that Snyman opportunity that he's being given. Less. He's not being relied on as much to hit rucks and hit tackles, and being given opportunity to carry, where he mightn't have that space, as you say, in the Leinster setup.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like you said, Tadhg Beirne, it was interesting that they even tried him at 6. I was under the impression that maybe himself and Itoje were kind of, pardon the pun, but locked down in the engine room, as it were. But they obviously put him there for a reason. They wanted to see him. I thought Curry did pretty okay at 6. I think he's a decent shout for there as well. But if someone like Joe is going to be such a big, put in such a big performance, it could, have Andy sort of assessing his options. You had, the back row, the rest of the back row, Pollock was there for the flair. And I thought he did really well when he made his breaks, but you had Josh with his work rate. And it's like, if you're picking one to be, if you have to pick one of them to be a 7, I think you really should go with Josh. He puts his head down, he gets the work done. That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's his game. And of course, then, Andy Farrell knows that game up well.
There's plenty of players who can bring a bit of flair. There's plenty of players who can bring something a bit flashy, but you want solid, steady, dependable work rate.
And of course, they combined really well. That Pollock, the Samos Williams try that Pollock pretty much set up, was also set up by Van der Fleer, and he didn't even get a mention by the commentators because you do notice Pollock. Yeah, you do notice Pollock, and he stands out, and those breaks are kind of his trademark. But it was a good link up from the two of them. I thought that was a good combination and stuff. Like you say, I don't think 8 is his position. He's not. He doesn't have the power so much that you would get from a Jack Conan or a Caelan Doris, but he definitely put his hand up for a spot in the 23. That's for sure. In the game. So I will say that about him. Tadhg Furlong, I mean, the way they've brought him into the series. He didn't even play for Leinster in the last few weeks. He just got a sub appearance last week, and now we're at the tour, and he's starting, and he was kind of quiet. The scrum, there were some issues at the scrum, and he wasn't the Ty Furlong we know. You'd want to give him time to get, but they don't have a lot of time. It's a relatively short tour compared to previous years. So, like you say, I mean, they won't start a midweek. So
he's got 2 games.
Yeah, and they won't start a midweek. So you've got next week. Yeah,
no, he's got maybe a bench appearance on Tuesday and an appearance on Saturday. So maybe 2 appearances, but it won't. That's it.
Yeah, and he'd really have to tear up trees. I mean, there's other options there. So, but we'll see.
There's about 80 minutes of rugby available to him.
Yeah, and in our WhatsApp group on Tomas Williams, in our WhatsApp group, they were saying how his initial pass isn't great. Now he's, of course, we're kind of spoiled by Gibson Park, especially in and around the 22. So basically you're criticizing for not being Gibson Park, but but like you say, his contributions towards the end, and unfortunately, ironically, that try, which ended up doing his injury, was it was classic support running for his own try earlier on as well. He is proving himself, useful working his way into the squad, and Mitchell's there as well. But it's I'm just assuming that they haven't made any announcements yet, and fingers crossed that Gibson Park is available. I'm hearing, I think Rory O'Connor said that they're himself and Hugo are expected to feature during the week. So hopefully that happens. If that's true, then it's well and good. But I think Tomas, made a decent case for himself, and I hope his injury isn't too bad. But when it's a leg injury like that, and the way he pulled up did not look good.
I think part of the issue then as well is if he's gone, who do they call up for replacement? And I think Van Poortvliet was called up for cover during the build up to the game in Dublin. I think that I'll be honest, I'd love to see Craig Casey, but on the other hand, I would hate to see Craig Casey denied the opportunity to captain Ireland first. I think it's one of those ones where if he gets called up, let him get called up after Saturday next week.
Yeah. I think they're married to the idea of getting Van Poortvliet. Unfortunately, I would say. I thought Conor Murray might be a good shout as well. Maybe he hasn't packed his bags.
He's down there already.
Exactly. So he could be. But anyway, listen, we'll see what happens there. All in all, I mean, how many times have we seen a 54-7 type scoreline for Leinster? And it's like, well, nothing learned. You're not going to learn anything from this. Bigger matches down the line. But a lot of these players are used to that, and you play what's in front of you. And I think we did learn a lot about the final squad.
That's it. We can't say there's no learning because it's players who haven't played together before ever, and now they're getting a chance. So you're definitely learning. You're seeing what's working. You're seeing what's not. You're struggling to see how your defensive system is going, but you can definitely see how your attack is clicking.
Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger sphere, like on TikTok, where we'll be doing previews of each Lions tour match with Mark Jackson over the coming weeks. To get access to all our content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin on Rugby. As ever, please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. Well, now we're going to turn our attention to the Irish under-20s. We're recording shortly after they played their first match of the World Championships over in Italy. The Georgians ran us close last year and had more returning players for this one. But still, Neil Doak's side managed just to keep them at arm's length with the 35-28 bonus point victory. What did you make of it, Conor?
The first 2 minutes, I thought we were in a very promising position because we went over very early and very quickly for the first try. And it's brilliant. Now, I'll say this with having no opportunity to watch highlights or a rewatch. I'm judging this purely on first take.
Hot take.
Yeah, I think that we looked a huge amount better in attack than we did in defense. I would say that if I was a defensive coach and I had access to the video of that game, I'd be haunting players with some of what they did. I would absolutely ruin their week with some coverage of particularly the first Georgian try. Because that first Georgian try, there's no excuse for a scrum half to run past, I think, 6 players. I could be wrong, but I think 6. It's a quick tap and whatever, but he's just gone straight past them. They're not awake. They're not switched on. They're not ready for the transition. And yeah, I'd be a scourge all week if I was their coach with, are you talking back to me? 6 defenders beaten, and I think by the end of the first half, I think we'd only missed 6 tackles. And I think all of them were for that first try. It was utterly criminal. Now, with that said, going forward, there was a lot more promise. I think there's a bit of creativity, there's a bit of invention, there's a bit of the fact that some players are playing together, not just in a club setup, or not just in a provincial setup, but in a club setup as well. So they really are familiar with each other. I want to say that there's a big advantage with the timing of this year, because I know in previous years, the Under-20s World Cup has hit right in the middle of leaving cert, and you've got players whose attention is very split and divided, and that's a massive challenge. But the fact that they're all in camp together now, they're in the headspace together, we should be seeing a little bit more click. But I think the fact that defensively we were so poor, it's great to score 5 tries. It's disappointing to concede 4. Up until the last couple of minutes, they were going home with nothing, and now they've got 2 bonus points. And those are 2 bonus points that, depending on how other games go, could prove very costly. It's conceding a score when, the top 4, it's 3 groups, and the winner of each group plus the best runner-up. You're not going to be a best runner-up if you're conceding tries at that rate. When you look at the fact that the South Africans hammered the Australians, England did a good number on Scotland. France did a big number on Spain. So, there's, and we've yet to see what New Zealand do. So there's already 3 teams ahead of us and a 4th big team to play. It's going to be hard to get the group out of the group stage and into playing one of the important semi-finals. The 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th place round, you don't want to be in that. You want to be in that 1 to 4. Because not only because you're playing against the best in that 1 to 4, but it's who wants to not be one of the top 4 teams in the world? Who wants to not have a chance at going on to win the competition? And we've gone close a couple of times in very recent years. I think that we were definitely playing better than we did in the Six Nations. I think there was definite improvement. A lot of the same players, a lot of the same lads going forward from that, from February and March, and still competing. I think there's a few players who really showed that they're deserving of their starting positions. I think we got very lucky in the middle of the game not to lose. Is it Milan, the prop? He'd already, so the poor referee had no idea how to referee a scrum, and got frustrated with the situation and said, "I don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. I'm sending 2 of you off right now." So for him to have already had a yellow, and then I think he refereed and judged that tackle very well, because it really was both of them getting low.
Yeah.
And it's a rugby collision, even though there's head contact. It's not for the lack of trying to avoid head contact. So we were lucky to keep 15 men on the pitch for the full 80. Our scrum, I mean, the Georgians are always good for a scrum, aren't they? And today was no exception. So, yeah, I think scrum needs work. I think defense needs work. And if we can work on those two things, I reckon that there's enough going on in what they're doing positively and what they're doing well in other aspects that we could do well beyond that if we can tidy up those two aspects.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the Irish under-20s, I suppose it depends on what kind of standards you're laying out. I mean, if you go by what's happened in the Six Nations in the past few years, or by the few years previous to this one, anyway, you'd be setting that bar pretty high. But that's not how under-20s work. Obviously, it's a new crop every year, and the other teams have their own new crops. It's completely different players and setups, often different coaches. So when you consider that we finished like dead last of this year's Six Nations, and plus when we played Georgia this time last year, they ran us really close. I mean, we ended up getting to the semifinals anyway, but the Georgians ran us really close. Right, it took a try right at the end to prevent an upset, and they had at that same Georgia team they had a lot of links. They had 9 players, I think, back from their squad from last year. So it was a tough start, and plus in the heat. I mean, it's pretty warm here in Ireland, but I think it was hitting 35, 36 degrees in Calvisano. And I brought receipts for this, and I'm a devil for trying to find patterns. But 4 of the Irish tries came at minute 1, 22, 41, and 60. So they were literally right after breaks. They took a water break so when they were rested and when they wwere ready to click into their game, and they were literally each time they were able to score. But as the game progressed, they didn't take long for the heat and the running and the tiredness to maybe set in. And by God, were they asleep for some of those tries. I mean, I think
possibly as well is that you're saying they come right at breaks.
Yeah.
And that's a time where you've had coaches or whoever on saying, well, why aren't you, can you, will you, do you, important questions. And that suggests to me that the team on the pitch today maybe weren't ready to think about other options. I think maybe in their heads it was like, okay, so this is the plan, let's go, and kind of forgot that they could maybe adapt, or maybe they're not prepared to adapt. I'm not sure. That I would worry that if we didn't have water breaks, would those scores have come the same way? Now, certainly for 2 of them, obviously the ones at minute 1 and minute 41, they're ones where you were going to get a chance to talk to coaches anyway. But yeah, I question if they hadn't a chance to talk to coaches, what then?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on there. I mean, I read a thread on Reddit after the game, the under-20s thread, and I mean, Reddit are just so talk about standards. I mean, they expect every play you do at whatever level. If it was an under-13s match, they'd be expecting world-class players. So they were very harsh on the team. But it was good that they got the win. They got the bonus point. They play Italy their next match on Friday. So they're the host team. It'll be an evening game because it's the Italians. The Italians get to play last because they're at home. So it might be a little cooler. I'm actually watching the game now. It's 14-0 at halftime to New Zealand against Italy in that game. So they're kind of holding them out in the first half. It's not too bad, but they might pull away in the second half. So there's opportunity for them now. Italy won't be easy. Home game, they need to get something from that. Individual performances, I thought Tom Wood at 10 was pretty good. Ironically, it was his howler at the end. He put one out in the full towards the end, which kind of led to that try that got them Georgia the 2 points. But before that, his kicking was on point. He was good with the ball. There was a lot of question marks that they left Wisniewski on the bench, but he might get his chance on Friday, so we'll see what happens there. Michael Foy is always impressive in the back row. That guy Mahan Ronan, he's a big guy. I think he got the bonus point try. Big lad, and thought he did really well. He played the full 80. So he'll be wrecked after that. Thought Podgy Farrell as well. We talk about these big boots at Leinster. He hit some the back three. He hit some right into the 22 from his own 22 as well. So there was some impressive things about that Irish display. You don't get 5 tries without doing some things right. And I do think the fitness came into account. But overall, decent start with all that's gone on this year, but they do have to bring it. This World Under-20 Championship 5-day turnaround in that heat. It's almost cruel to expect it of them, but we'll see how they rotate the squad against Italy on Friday. Okay, well, listen, we're going to leave it there for now when it comes to this pod. Many thanks for joining me, Conor.
Thanks a million.
And but we're actually going to chat for a bit longer, looking ahead to Ireland's mini tour against Georgia and Portugal. That's the senior team led by Paul O'Connell and Craig Casey. To catch that, stay tuned to our YouTube channel. That should be up on Tuesday morning. Like I said, do check us out on TikTok during the week, where we'll be covering the Lions' next outing against the Reds. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.